Life can be fast-paced, strenuous, and flat-out overwhelming. Life transitions and taboo topics can make it hard to catch your breath. Welcome to Breathe, a podcast that enables you to slow down, get your bearings, and engage in real conversations where no topic is off limits. Breathe is presented by Breath of Life, hosted by David Person and speaker-director Pastor Debleaire Snell.
Boom!
Here we go.
What's up, Pastor?
Hey.
Debleaire Snell. Good to see you, man.
We back in here.
Again.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. The year is kind of moving fast.
It is going by fast.
Yeah. And let me tell you, by the way, I was in Atlanta not too long ago at the Maranatha SDA Church.
Okay.
Got some Breathe fans there.
In the A. Okay.
And
All right.
people bringing it up. And in fact, one brother, man, my man Charlie Staley, he said, come here. And I was like, huh. And he said, I want you to meet my wife. I was like, okay. And then he said, this is the guy that we look at on television. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So it was good. It's good.
Good stuff.
Good to know that. And we welcome everybody, not just the Staley family and the Maranatha Church in Atlanta, but everybody who watches or listens to Breathe. We're glad to have you with us. And we are in a series of special episodes with some very bright, engaged young people who are part of Gen Z.
Yeah.
And we're going to introduce you to them now. First, Megan Woods, who is our UNCF queen for Oakwood and for the nation. Megan, welcome. Good to see you again. We got Mr. Avery. Avery, let me get your last name, man. Avery Brown. That's right. Avery Brown, who is a sophomore theology major from Upper Marlboro, Maryland.
Yes, sir.
Avery, good to see you again. Thanks for hanging around with us. Seated next to Avery is Ms. Akila McTavish, who is from Kingston, Jamaica.
Yes.
You like that?
Yeah.
Sure. That's about the only thing. That's about all I can say. Jamaican accent. But Akila, it's good to see you as well again. Seated in the back row, Gabe, my man, Gabe Morency, who is also from Upper Marlboro, Maryland. And then finally, last but not least, we got Mr. Andre Jones, who is from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Good to see all of you again.
Yeah. So today we're going to get into it. We're going to dive right into the deep end again. So, we've talked about Gen Z in church and Gen Z and love and dating, but today we're going to talk about Gen Z and politics. Now, again, we're not necessarily trying to get into anybody's specific political ideology or values, but we want to see kind of what's making you tick. Like, what is this emerging generation processing? What matters? And I think many times there are a lot of assumptions, but I think it's critical that we hear from you very, very directly. All right. So I guess as we get into this today, one of my questions is, where do you get your news from? Like, how do you stay informed? Do you sit down and watch CNN? I'm assuming you probably don't read the newspaper. Is it on social media? Is it blogs? Is it YouTube? Like, how do you gather information about what's happening in the world?
I have the Apple News notification.
Right.
And it'll give you a headline of everything that's happened in the past day, and breaking stories will come through. So I usually read that in the morning just to stay up to date.
Right.
Yeah. I would say same, but also I follow
Apple News.
Apple News, but I also follow ABC on TikTok.
Okay.
And when
yeah.
It was actually funny. They popped up one day, and I was like, I probably need this to figure out what's going on in the world. So I followed them. But if I'm home, the TV's on. The news is on. Yeah.
Oh, really? What channel?
Well, for my parents, they watch CNN or ABC as well. Most of the times we watch ABC News.
Okay.
Yeah, I would definitely say through social media for the majority. I don't think I'd ever really watch the news unless I'm at my grandparents' house. So.
So when you say social media, you mean from social media news sites?
Yeah, social media.
Like ABC?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I mean, every now and then, you'll see like someone random post something, but you got to check if it's actually real.
You have to check if it's true. Yeah.
Okay.
Social media, obviously, sometimes I listen to the radio. That might be very old school.
Wow.
But when I'm home, my mom and I, our thing is that we'll sit down, we'll watch the news, and we'll discuss current events.
Okay. Now, I got to, as a radio guy, because that's my background, I got to ask you, what radio news do you listen to?
In Maryland, I forgot the name of the channel, but Yeah.
It's a local station?
It's a local station.
Probably WTOP.
Yes, it's WTOP.
Yeah. Okay.
So he knows.
Okay.
Yeah. He's a radio guy.
Yeah. Andre?
I would say just from social media and at home with my grandmother.
Yeah. Okay.
Mother.
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of your, just maybe political awareness or identity or even your ideology, would you say kind of what you believe? Did you get that more from your parents and it was kind of passed down through dinner table conversation or just kind of really maybe some instruction? Or have you kind of really ventured out through study and research and conversation and kind of developed an ideology that's maybe different than what you kind of heard or, had espoused to you coming up?
I would say for me, definitely a lot of the foundations were from my parents.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, mommy and daddy. But as I got older, some of their ideologies I disagree with. But my parents are great. They allow me to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think the foundations they, set, but I came up with my own thoughts and ideas as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my parents did a really good job of teaching me how to think and never what to think. And so after learning how to think, I was given the freedom to shape my personal views.
Okay. Let me ask you this. What did that look like in terms of them giving you, I guess, a framework for how to think, as opposed to saying, right, this is what you should believe?
Right.
How did that, was it just a back and forth? Was it, I would say, a debate? Was it just kind of an open dialogue? What did that look like?
Well, one thing my dad taught me from a very young age was to question things and to ask questions. And so he taught me not to just accept what you see at face value on TV, but to ask, where did this come from? Why does someone believe this? What is the presupposition behind this thought? And so learning how to ask the right questions and then also learning how to ask the right questions in a biblical framework and then coming to your conclusion through that was what they did.
I love that. Okay. Good stuff. Huh? Megan, you want to jump in?
Absolutely. I would say my family, we like to talk. So the dinner table things usually come up and it's like, well, what do you think? And it was never appropriate to just not have an answer. You can say, I don't know.
Literally.
You have to say, well, I think such and such. Okay, why do you think that?
Yeah.
And then a lot of times I didn't know. And it'd be like, okay, great. We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Okay.
And I had to have something to say tomorrow. So it was a lot of like, hey, you always have to have something to say. It's not enough to just not know.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. Andre?
I apologize. Do you mind repeating the question?
Yeah. No, so we're just saying, just in terms of your political values, ideology, just worldview, is it more what was passed down from your parents or, just through study, research, or just kind of engaging in the world? Did you develop an ideology that's a little bit more your own and maybe a little different than what you grew up believing?
Well, I'll definitely say for me specifically, it came from a lot of parents. So what they believed. And over time, as Akila was saying, like some things I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And other things I was like, I can't agree with that. So then I appreciate the opportunity for my mom giving me the voice to even say that, to speak up.
So I have a question. And Gabe, I wanted to see if both you and Ava can jump in on this. So in a world filled with just misinformation, right? And you guys maybe, engage with social media a lot. If you see an article or a blog or an idea come up and you read it, you digest it, how do you vet to see whether or not this is true? Like, what's your metric to kind of say, oh, this is not worth considering, or this is not accurate? How do you vet whatever it is? I want to get everybody in, but I know he's going into the public policy sphere. So I'm just curious to see kind of how you work through that.
That's a great question. Thank you. Well, I don't follow one news source. So I like to follow a very left news source, a very right news source, and then something that's more so moderate. And I find that when you look at what people on the far left are saying, what people on the far right are saying, what people in the middle are saying, you can kind of vet, what is really happening or what is the accurate picture of what's going on.
Okay. All right.
Definitely. I would say for me, if I see something off first glance, like just scrolling through my phone, the first thing I'll do is probably look at the comment section. Because oftentimes when you look at the comments, you can see other people saying like, yeah, that's not true. This is just random, et cetera, et cetera. But if I don't feel like I have a clear enough lens of gathering whether or not this is true, I'll usually just look it up on like Google, like actually look it up and see like what's going on as opposed to just taking it for a news channel's face value.
Okay. All right. Megan, how about you? How do you kind of vet it? How do you decide, okay, this is accurate. Okay, this is propaganda?
Absolutely. So Instagram has a thing that says fact checker on the bottom.
Okay.
So it'll say, hey, this is not verified, or hey, this is verified. And then from there, I don't trust that either. I just kind of assume everything's an opinion piece unless it's a verified account or a certified account.
Okay.
And from there, I'll Google like, hey, is this true? Hey, what are you saying? What's the meat of it? What's versus what's the opinion?
Okay.
Yeah.
So do any of you have trusted news sources that you absolutely feel like, okay, that's coming from an institution or a media outlet that I have confidence in terms of it being accurate, factual, and unbiased?
I see you. Both of you are kind of shaking your head. No, seems like. Go ahead. Okay.
Well, I definitely think that in all news sources there's bias. You shouldn't, but there is, and I go to them obviously to find out what's going on. But I do know that there are biases in all of them. So yeah,
Andre.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that everybody's going to speak, of course, from what they see, but somewhere in there is going to be editorial of how they feel.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
All right.
Interesting.
So this is how do you guys? I'm gonna kind of blend a couple questions, and you can kind of pick which part of it you want to address. How do you all process injustice when you see it in the world? Is it just, there's gonna always be something happening, so I just need to do what I need to do? Do you feel the need to engage, or even when you see something like, I don't know if you guys were aware of just kind of, and there's been some controversy in recent weeks, whether the Target boycott is ended, whether it's still going. Yeah. Do you see a national boycott of an institution that may have reneged on some promises or maybe engaged in something that harms your community? Are you like, okay, man, I'm about that boycott? Or are you just kind of like, I ain't got time for that? How do you process injustice when you see it? And is it a call to action? Is it more like, okay, in the world, you're gonna always have something, so I just need to kind of keep doing me. What's your thought?
I'm definitely in the middle.
Okay.
Because I remember when it was COVID, around COVID time, where Black Lives Matter was very, popular. I went to a lot of the protests. Okay. But I do believe that in this world, there's always going to be some form of injustice.
That's true.
We won't be able to eat because Walmart, Target, all of them, Amazon, everything supports. So I'm definitely in the middle, and I definitely believe that it's tactics. You have to know where to fight and where to, step back, but still standing up for what you believe in, but also knowing that we need these resources.
All right. So you have to choose my battles.
Yeah.
Okay. But
I would say I try to be intentional about checking up on those to which they may have been affected by something else that's going on in the world. For example, when there were all those hurricanes taking place, especially in Jamaica, I have a lot of friends who have family there. So it's important to be intentional and just helping out however I can. In terms of the boycotting and whatnot, to be completely honest, the first few months, I'm really, for it. Let's see how we, there's certain things that these places may have that I'm like, man, low-key kind of need that. So yeah.
All right. Megan, how about you?
Absolutely. I'll say I'm all for a good boycott, especially if it's something like Target. I lasted for a really, really, really long time. But I go there to walk around. So if I just if I'm not supporting them, I'm just walking around. So I don't buy anything, but I have taken a couple strolls and things like that. So for me, it's just finding a balance between, okay, great. I know where I go for peace and for calm. It's like, okay, this is where I'm going versus, hey, I'm doing something to actively support a corporation who's hurting people.
Okay.
So my walk does nothing to their profit margin.
How about you, Gabe?
I think for me, I have a set of values that I kind of negotiate whenever there's something going on. And so if those values in any way are put into conflict with what's going on, then I'm the type of person where I like to take action. And sometimes I like to take extreme action. And sometimes my action is just having conversations. Sometimes it's boycotting. Sometimes it's protesting. But that's kind of how I deal with conflict as it happens in the world. And sometimes it's acknowledging that right now I'm a college student. I need to graduate. But when I do get into the world and when I am on God's purpose for my life, I'm going to do something about that. So.
What would you consider an extreme action?
Well, I think
Now, you're not going to be throwing those cocktails.
we don't destroy degrade property. But I think sometimes an extreme action can be protesting.
A protest, yeah.
Sometimes an extreme action can be boycotting. And I think it really does depend, when it comes to kind of the current climate of what's going on in the world. I think sometimes, when you look at what happened, let's look at history. When you look at what happened with the Holocaust, you might argue that an extreme action would have been hiding a Jew in your home.
Sure.
And so I think things like that would be examples of extreme
which would have been
action.
a very righteous action.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sure.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Do you all... Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Okay, jump in there, Andre.
I was just going to say I'm more so in the middle. So of course, I'm one man, so it's a lot going on in the world. But at the same time, if I see something directly affecting the community that I love or care about, I'll help them out. For sure.
Okay.
So we're moving towards the end here, but I have to ask, what kind of value do you place on the civil rights movement and that approach to dealing with injustice?
Well, when you say value, can you explain a little bit more? What do you mean?
Well, in other words, do you believe that it was important? Does it influence even how you look at how you relate to the world today, especially when you see various types of injustice happening? However, whatever you're looking at, however you define injustice.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, there's nothing new under the sun. So I think when you know your history, when things happen, you're not like, oh my goodness, how could this happen? Well, if you knew, you probably know what's going to happen next just based off what happened before. So I definitely think there's immense value, but it's also understanding and informing people on their history. Like, hey, this is what happened before. It may look different, but know that this is the blueprint that we're following.
Okay.
I think to kind of speak to that, there's two things I want to say. The first is that the interesting thing about the civil rights movement is that there were so many different groups that came out of it. You have the non-violent Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and then you have the Black Panther Party. And I think that the civil rights movement kind of showed us really primarily that as people, we have power and influence. But it also shows us, and I was having a conversation with Avery about this a couple of weeks ago, it also showed us that it's possible to endure and have hope in difficult times. I think sometimes we ask ourselves, how do these people get through? How do they overcome? And I think that having things like the civil rights movement shows us that you can overcome, that you can endure.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. And I definitely believe another thing, speaking to the different groups that came out of it, it also showed you the different ways that you can make a difference. You can be peaceful. There's a time to be, a bit more rowdy and have a boycott or do something, but you don't always have to be in just one demographic. You don't always have to be in one place or do one thing to make a difference. So I definitely think that it shaped the way that we now address certain issues.
Quick question. All right. Because I know we're kind of going into home base a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you think it's important to vote? Do you think voting or not voting makes a difference? And how do you, if you do vote, how do you go about vetting or researching a candidate? And again, we're not asking you to say I'm pro this or pro that, but how do you think it even matters? And how do you go about researching and saying, okay, that's a person that aligns with my values or align with the vision they're communicating?
Yeah. I would say that voting is definitely important. And I very much dislike the excuse that it's choosing, the lesser evil. Yes, exactly. It is true. That is 1000% true, but you should still choose. Don't just leave it up to chance. I'll just sit out on this one because it does make a difference. But I definitely
think we're seeing it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
we do. We definitely do. But I was just going to say, vetting them, I would look at their morals and, things that they've done, because again, it is choosing the lesser evil. But in being in politics, you always kind of go into little corrupt things. Like, things always happen in politics, but just seeing their character, seeing what they've done, and seeing what they can do for the nation. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that for me, I definitely have voted and will continue to vote because, my right to vote was something that was fought for. And I think that it's important that we exercise that privilege. Because again, the way things are going, you never know. That may not be a privilege that I'm afforded. But I think that it's important to not only look back at the civil rights movement and see the different groups that came out of it, but the way in which they accomplished what they accomplished. Because oftentimes, like you said, there's nothing new under the sun, which also means that the methods can also be slightly tweaked and shifted to still make that same kind of a difference.
Okay. All right. How about you, Megan?
Absolutely. I'll say voting 100% matters. In the election in 2024, I lived in Spain. So I was voting absentee from Spain to make sure my vote got in time. When I tell you the entire campus rallied around me and was like, get her to the post office. She needs to vote. It just kind of stresses the importance of yes voting. So while it may not have gone a certain way, I still know it mattered. I still know I put effort into making sure my voice was heard and it counted, even if it wasn't an ideal result. But I would say it definitely matters to vote and getting there. And when it comes to researching, I go, hey, let me look at debates and let me look at what you stand for in your past history. Yes, people are capable of change, but if you've done something your entire life, why am I to think if I appoint you, you're going to do something different? Come on, Mike.
If I could just jump into that really quick, I think watching the full debate is really important. I know social media tends to like clip little parts of it, and people make judgments of the entire candidate just based off of those little clips. But I think taking time to sit down, even with like just a few friends or your family, to watch the entirety of it can give you a fresher perspective of who you think you should vote for.
Embrace context, not clips.
Right.
All right. Andre?
I definitely would say voting is important. And just to kind of vet the people that I vote for, I actually do sit there and watch the debate. Like, I think that is important. Like, what are you saying? What are your policies? What am I saying yes to? What am I agreeing to? So,
okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think voting I think voting is very important. I think what I want to focus on though is like vetting the candidates, because I think that that's something that we don't do enough. I think looking at what they donate to, looking at what they give their money to. I also think looking at what think tanks and foundations they're a part of, because when you see what their think tank is espousing, you can pretty much guess what it is that they want to do when they get into office. And I also think just looking at their education, looking at their background, their parents, their family, where they came from, those are all really important things.
All of those are clues. They're all indicators, especially in terms of when we talk about the financial contributions.
Yes.
Even the Bible says where your treasure is,
there
shall your heart be also.
Yes.
So what people donate to, it says a lot about who they are and what those values, those true values actually are. This has been really, I think, insightful. And I do want to say to you all, and just to any of your peers that are looking, I think it's critical now more than ever. Now, you stated something. Injustice, like Jesus says, the poor you will have with you always. So there will always be this imbalance of resources, power, and wealth. But I just think that, when you look at the eras of history where great atrocity prevails, essentially what that means is that you have a group of masses that was either indifferent, not paying attention, or living unto themselves. And really all it takes for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing. And so I just think that as that era, of people who lived through the civil rights era, who they're taking their rest, it is very critical that there is a socially aware, spiritually alert, well-informed generation coming behind them. Because as Megan stated, there's nothing new under the sun. Life is, when you look at history's kind of trend, it's just a series of actions and reactions. And so you wind up back in the same place, and there's usually a template that the generation before you has left for how you deal with injustice, how you overcome it. But if you're only kind of looking at Instagram, if you're only looking at Facebook, you may miss some things that are happening in a very subtle way. But it shows up in a very overt way in a very short period of time.
Well said, Pastor. As we wrap, let me just ask a quick question. Don't want to know if you have a party I don't want to know what party you have an affiliation or a preference for if you do, but I want to know, do you have a party that you have either a formal affiliation with or that you have a preference for? Just yes or no?
No.
No. Yes?
Yes. Okay.
No.
Wow.
So we have 4 out of 5 who are unaffiliated politically. Wow, that's very interesting.
So I think that actually is very much, that's saying something.
Yeah, it is.
Whereas kind of probably my age and a little older, it's probably you're either in this camp or that camp by and large. But I think we're seeing quite a seismic shift. Okay.
Very enlightening.
Good stuff. All right.
Young people, thank you for your time with us today. And we'll see you for the next episode.
There you go. All right.
And to those of you watching, remember, as always, stop, pray, and breathe.
Breathe is produced by David Person for Breath of Life. Executive producer is Debleaire Snell. and sound engineer is Kirk Nugent. Audio episodes of Breathe can be found on Apple, Spotify, or Google Podcast platforms. For video episodes and extra content, check out the Breath of Life YouTube channel. Breath of Life is faith-based content, resources, and programs from a contemporary urban perspective for those looking for hope and guidance. We believe that every breath we take is a testimony that God is consistent, that He loves us, and has a plan for our lives.